So what if you're 29 years old, maybe 20, maybe 19, like whatever age you are, and you owe over $100,000 in student loan debt, right? I like to call that a massive hole that is going to be really hard for you to actually get out of, okay? Unless you use this tactic. And yes, I did see the Dave Ramsey video when he talked about a million. And when you talk about these things, right, you might say like, Tommy, for you to get to $100,000, that means you have to be really, really stupid, okay? And in reality, you really don't have to be that stupid. And in reality, society tells you that if you get into this amount of debt, then you're probably very smart. The reason is because if you go to a good college, you might just like get into debt like really fast and really massive of this amount and this caliber. For example, if you go to Columbia College, NYU, one of those colleges, you might just graduate with like maybe $100,000 in student loan debt, and every single person that's out there might tell you, "Oh my gosh, you are so smart," okay? But guys, how can I actually teach you exactly how to get out of debt, whether it's $100,000, whether it's $30,000, whether it's $500, whether it's even $1 million, right? And I want to share a story with you guys, right? Because every single time I found myself in a place of like, like confusion, or a place of like ignorance, or I didn't know what to do, or I felt stupid or anything like that, I always found myself like having a book to actually go to and actually like figuring out how to do things, because we have the ability to read books, read other people's lives and experiences, and use that to actually improve our own, okay? So I remember reading this book. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. And because of that book, I actually learned exactly how to do every single thing I'm actually going to teach you in this video. Now, before I do start this video, guys, I did watch one of the Dave Ramsey videos, and he did say in one of them, he was like, you know what? Okay, all right. You owe how much? $110,000. No, I think he owed, like, the guy owed him, it was him and his wife, right? And they owed like around $30,000. Okay, let me do my Dave Ramsey voice. Okay, so you owe $30,000. You're like dumb as a rock. Okay, and how can you not pay it off when you have a salary of around $110,000? Well, I have a Land Rover, I have this, I have that. And he says, well, all right, what we're gonna do is this, okay? We're gonna stop funding your retirement, and we're gonna exile some of those cars, and then we're just gonna focus on paying back that debt. Okay? And it sounds very good in theory, right? You focus on debt, you get rid of it, but I really don't do that. I don't focus on debt, and I'm going to tell you exactly why, right? Because when I was in debt, and it wasn't really massive debt, right? Right now, maybe like I told you last video, right? $13,000 in credit cards and maybe $20,000 in student loans. I pay 0 interest on the credit cards, and I pay some interest on the student loans, but that's like maybe like 2, 3, 4%, and I pay off the interest. So I'm fine with that, because if I pay that amount of money, well, it doesn't make sense for me, because that money I can use it to keep flipping and making more and more money every single year. Okay, so you always have to think about opportunity costs, right? So for example, right, what if you owe so much money? Like, what do you do in this case, right? So when I was in that place and I owed $2,000 and I had no way of getting out of it, when I read The Richest Man in Babylon, which is literally one of my favorite books. And by the way, guys, if you want to read the book, I have a link down below for 2 free audiobooks from Audible. You can sign up, cancel in 30 days, and it's basically free. Okay, so you get the book, you get the information, you get everything free, and you also get to support the channel by doing that. Okay, but here's the deal, right? If you want to get out of debt, right, the way I did it is actually by not really just focusing on debt, but focusing on everything else. What do I mean by this, right? When I owed around $2,000 in debt, right, and I thought about it, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, how am I gonna get rid of this when I'm not really earning that much money and I'm just starting out this business? Okay, it's really hard, it's very complicated. And you might say, Tommy, $2,000 is nothing, right? Well, it's kind of nothing for me now, but back then that was like a ton of money. You know what I'm saying? Like $2,000 was like crazy money for me, And I was 19, by the way, and that's how much like time changes. Okay, you can leap generations just by like reading some books and actually like sharing your experiences with people and keep growing and growing and growing, right? But to kind of make a long story short, I was $2,000 in debt, and the way I actually figured a way to actually get out of it without actually focusing on debt, right? I got out of it like maybe in 3 to 4 or 5 months, maybe a year, right? I did this entire plan for an entire year, but I got rid of the debt for like 6 months, right? What I did was, I like to call it extreme debt repayment, but not really just focusing on debt, right? Because I remember a story in the book, and the guy was like one of those like old people back in the days, right? And he was actually a slave, and he got out of being a slave, and then he couldn't go back home, because if he went back home, he would be hung. And the reason he would be hung was because he owed a lot. Well, not hung, he would be locked up, imprisoned, for the rest of his life, because he owed so much money, right? So he decided to go back, right? And when he went back, he decided to pay back everyone. But the way he actually did it was by doing this, right? Every time he got paid, right, he would give a percentage of that money first to himself, right? and then after what he had left, he would actually pay the people that he actually owed, right? In today's terms, right, what this means is, you invest in yourself first, right? So I'm not telling you to be like Dave Ramsey and say like, oh, stop funding your retirement, stop doing this, stop doing that. Like, okay, I'm not telling you that, because to me, that doesn't make any sense, right? For me, what I did was I created 6 accounts, right? 6 different types of accounts. And I have a budgeting video that teaches you exactly how to do this, right? But I created 6 different accounts, and each account was meant for a purpose. Every account had a job, because I remember when I read that book, it basically told you that, money is either your slave or your its slave, so I made sure that I had money working for me at all times. Okay, and how you do that is by giving money a purpose for every single thing that you actually needed to do. So for example, right, I had 6 accounts, right? My first account was an emergency account, right? This account was meant to be for emergencies. I'm talking about real emergencies, not like, oh my gosh, I just need to go this place, or I need to do that, I need to buy something, I need to play this video game, I need to do that, I need to buy like this Ferrari. Like, I'm not talking about that. That's not a real emergency. Okay, I'm talking about like if someone passes away in your family, you lose your job emergency, like a natural disaster happens, like your whole house got burned down. Those are real emergencies, right? So you start creating a fund that goes directly into funding this emergency, right? I like to distribute like no less than 10% of all my money towards this, right? So no less than 10%. So this time, I think I was distributing like maybe like between like maybe like $20 a week, maybe 40, 50. I think at one point I got to 100. I'm not sure, right? But I remember at the end of the year when I first started this out, this account, right? My friends used to laugh at me, right? Because I just started out by doing $20, and by the end of the year, I had around $2,000 in this emergency fund that I had, right? And all of my friends had literally nothing, because although they were laughing at me, they weren't really doing anything for themselves. Okay, so I want you guys to make sure that you understand this, right? It doesn't matter how much you put towards it; it has to be at least 10%, right? And it might seem like nothing at first, but in reality, it will keep adding up and building up. Now, you're probably telling me, Tommy, are you asking me to make like 6 different bank accounts? No, I'm not. Okay, what I'm telling you is to keep track of everything. For me personally, when I first did this, I personally had to get a piggy bank, right? That you literally couldn't get access to the money, right? So I just used to put the money inside of that like that. Every single week, I used to put it in, and I couldn't get it out without breaking it. And then that's another layer for you to actually break it. So mentally, I knew that that money was separated and I couldn't touch it, okay? So here's what happened. After the year, I had $2,000. If you think that you won't touch the money and you're good and you're solid, kind of like how I am now, that you don't need all this training, then you can open up like a savings account with Marcus by Goldman Sachs, and you put that money in there, right? Because it earns you interest every single year and helps you fight inflation, right? The second account I made was an investment account, right? This investment account was for what it sounds like, investments. So I started investing in stocks, I started investing into my business, I started investing into a whole bunch of things, and then that investment account made me more and more money, right? So every single week that I would get paid, I would take around no less than 10%. Sometimes it would be 40%, sometimes it would be 30%, but I would always take no less than 10% for any of these accounts, usually, okay? And I would take the money, I would invest it, and I would make more money. What does this mean? What type of investments are you talking about, Tommy? Well, I mean that if you want to be smart, because someone told me in the video that there's no way to actually make a 60 to 80% return every single year unless you're selling drugs. Well, I'm not a drug dealer. I probably won't like actually last being a drug dealer. I'm not good at it. I never actually did it, by the way. I think I'm scared of that stuff, okay? But here's my thing, right? If you literally sell things on eBay, right? Because I went to well, you can call me like a eBay dealer, okay? I used to go like to Goodwill all the time, buy a whole bunch of things, buy it for $3 and sell it for $70 on eBay. You can do the math. How much a return is that? That's like a lot of money. Okay, if you do some quick math, I think it's a 400% return or maybe a 4,000% return. But the return is possible, okay? You just need to be flipping things. The only way you can actually make that type of return is by starting a business. I'm not telling you to go invest your money with someone else, because I do invest into like stock markets and stuff like that. And I do invest into mutual funds and stuff like that, and index funds also. And here's my thing, right? If you don't feel comfortable with starting a business with this account, you can literally just take that money and invest into index funds with Acorn. I also have a link down below that helps you start an Acorn account and gives you $5, okay? So you can do that, okay? The third account that I did was called a debt account, right? And this is where it actually comes in. So notice that when I got paid, the third account that actually went into like actually paying that debt back was actually after I did an emergency fund, after I made investments, and then came the debt, okay? So then I started putting money into that, right? So for example, if I owed a ton of money and I'm seeing myself in trouble, then I would say this, right? I would put in like 40% of all the money that I got paid into my debt account and actually try to pay it off every single week, right? Because I was getting paid weekly, you might be getting paid bi-weekly or monthly, like whatever it is, that's how you do it, okay? The fourth and fifth account were expenses and fun money, right? Because I like balancing things out, right? So you calculate your expenses and then you calculate your percentage by your income. So for example, if you make $1,000 a week and your expenses are like maybe like $200 or like $800, then you calculate it, you divide it by each other, you get that percentage, and then it tells you how much money you need to put aside every single week. So then when that time comes when you need to pay your bills, you can actually pay them. Now, guys, I am not telling you to keep the same expenses that you already have, because a lot of people have expenses that they don't actually need. I mean, live frugally, cut out expenses that you don't need, and actually start making things actually happen the way they should. Now, when it comes to a fund account, I would always distribute around between like 5%, maybe 10%, depending on what it actually is. Now you can imagine that now I can't do 5% or 10% because the amount of money that would actually go to those accounts would be like way too high. And for me personally, I don't really need like more than $50 to $100 a week to actually just have some fun, okay? So you need to calculate that for yourself, and maybe it's like 50, $100, and then you can have fun with that. But that job for that money is like just to have fun. And don't say like, oh, I'm not gonna have fun. You need to have fun because mentally you're doing something great, but it puts a lot of stress on your mind. So every single week you kind of need to like have a little fun. Use that money to go out, go eat something, go do something fancy, and then you come back and then you kind of like refuel. You know what I mean? And the last account that I actually had was the charity account, right? And that account was like literally like 1% when I first started out, and I would just put like 1% of all the money that I earned and I would give it to charity. That's how I did it. That's how I started, okay? Now, for every single person that's out there that might say, well, Tommy, why wouldn't I just focus on paying all my debt, okay? The reason is because if I just focus on paying all my debts, right, then I probably would have fallen behind on some bills, on some of my expenses, and on some of my life obligations, and I didn't want to do that. And I didn't just want to focus on paying debt. I wanted to focus on something that gives me an overall balance of my life that I could probably do for the rest of my life, okay? So by doing these things that, you know, basically dividing money into 6 accounts, you give your money 6 jobs. By doing this, by the time I got rid of my debt, I not only got rid of my debt, but I had like investments already made. I not only had investments, I also had an emergency fund already made. I not only did that, I also had enough money to always cover all my expenses every single month. And I also had money to actually play with, to actually have fun with. And I also gave to charity. Like, there's nothing better to actually have a balance that well. So Dave Ramsey might tell you, oh, don't do that. Just focus on debt. Just do this. Just do that. And then you start doing like what you should be doing. I'm not going to tell you that. I'm telling you right now, right? You start by building yourself up first, and then you worry about paying that person later. Well, not later, right? Because you're paying them instantly, like every single week, but you're paying them, right? But you're also, your main priority is you, actually focusing on yourself. Guys, my name is TommyBryson. If you don't know me, thanks for watching the video. Subscribe and like and comment. If you have any special circumstances you want to talk about, just comment down below. Let me know. And if you don't want to share it with the public, then just DM me on Instagram at TommyBryson, and then we can DM back and forth, and I can actually tell you, give you some advice, and you can actually follow it, or you can choose not to. Okay? Because everyone has a choice in life. This is America, by the way. And I'll see you guys next on my next video, and peace.
You've got to start